Ovulation is the release of egg from the ovaries. In humans, this event occurs when the degrafted follicles rupture and release the secondary octal ovarian cells. After ovulation, during the luteal phase, the egg will be available to be fertilized by sperm. In addition, the uterine lining is thickened to be able to receive a fertilized egg. If no conception occurs, the uterine lining, as well as blood, will be shed during menstruation. In humans, ovulation occurs about midway through the menstrual cycle, after the follicular phase. The few days surrounding ovulation constitute the most fertile phase. The time from the beginning of the last menstrual period until ovulation is on average 14.6 days, but with substantial variation between females and between cycles in any single female, with an overall 95% prediction interval of 8.2 to 20.5 days. The process of ovulation is controlled by the hypothalamus of the brain and through the release of hormones secreted in the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. In the pre-ovulatory phase of the menstrual cycle, the ovarian follicle will undergo a series of transformations called cumulus expansion, which is stimulated by FSH. After this is done, a hole called a stigma will form in the follicle, and the secondary octicle will leave the follicle through this hole. Ovulation is triggered by a spark in the amount of FSH and the LH released from the pituitary gland. During the luteal phase, the secondary octal will travel through the fallopian tubes towards the uterus. If fertilized by a sperm, the fertilized secondary octicle or ovum may implant there 6 to 12 days later. The follicle phase is the phase of the menstrual cycle during which the ovarian follicles mature. The follicular phase lasts from the beginning of menstruation to the start of ovulation. For ovulation to be successful, the ovarium must be supported by the corona radiata and cumulus orphanus granulosa cells. The latter undergo a period of proliferation and multiplication known as cumulus expansion. Multiplication is the secretion of the hyaluronic acid-rich cocktail that depresses and gathers the cumulus cells network in a sticky matrix around the ovarium. This network stays with the ovarium after ovulation and has been shown to be necessary for fertilization. An increase in colostrum cells number causes a common increase in atrial fluid volume that can swell the follicle to over 20 millimeters in diameter. It forms a pronounced bulge at the surface of the ovary called a blister. Estrogen levels peak towards the end of the follicular phase. This causes a surge of levels of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. This lasts from 24 to 36 hours, and results in the rupture of an ovary follicles, causing the octicle to be released from the ovary via the oviduct. Through the signal transduction cascaded insulin by LH are secreted by the follicle that degraded the follicular tissue to the site of the blister, forming a hole called the stigma. The secondary octile levels the ruptured follicle and moves out into the peritoneal cavity through the stigma, where it is caught by a fimbriae at the end of the fallopian tubes. After entering the oviduct, the ovulation is pushed along by cilia, beginning its journey towards the uterus. By this time, the ovule is completed memesis, yielding 2 cells, the largest secondary octicle that contains all of the material and the smaller inactive first polar body. Mesis 2 follows at once but will be arrested in the metaphase and will so remain until fertilization. The spindle apparatus of the second meiotic division appears at the time of ovulation. If no fertilization occurs, the octicle will degrade between 12 and 24 hours after ovulation. Apparently, 1 to 2% of ovulations release more than one octicle. This tendency increases with mature age. Fertilization of 2 different octicles by 2 different spermatozoa results in fraternal twins. The mucous membrane of the octicles, termed the fontanelles, has reached its maximum size, and so have the adrenal glands, although they are still non-secreting. The luteal phase. The follicle proper has met the end of its lifespan. Without the octicle, the follicle folds inwards on itself, transforming into the corpus luteum, a stereographic cluster of cells that produces estrogen and progesterone. Those hormones induce the endometrial glands to begin production of the proliferative endometrium and later in secretory endometrium. The site of embryonic growth, if implanted, occurs. The action of progesterone increases basal body temperature by 1/4 to 1/2 degrees Celsius, 1/2 to 1 degree Fahrenheit. The corpus luteum continues this potent action for the remainder of the menstrual cycle, maintaining the endometrium before disintegrating into scar tissue during menses.